Hello to my loyal listeners. Imagine this. On a night filled with glitter, flashing lights, and screaming fans, Selena Gomez steps onto the red carpet. Not in designer couture, not dripping with diamonds, but in a faded denim jacket and a plain white t-shirt. Cameras freeze. Gasps echo through the crowd. Laughter erupts. Influencers whisper cruel words as flashes capture the moment. But no one knows that behind that simple outfit lies a promise made to a dying child. A promise that will soon uncover a truth so heartbreaking, it will tear your soul apart. And tonight, that truth begins to unfold. Naman sebelum masuk kusaritanya sebutkan dari kota mana kalian tinggal. Semoga Tuhan memberi anda kesehatan dan rezeki yang banyak karena sudah subscribe, like, komen dan membagikan cerita ini. Now let's get into the story. The night was meant to be perfect. A grand charity gala held at the Four Seasons Hotel in Beverly Hills. The world's biggest stars were expected to appear in sparkling gowns and custom-tailored suits, and every entertainment outlet was watching. Selena arrived without an entourage. She stepped out of a modest black SUV, no limo, no assistants, no glam squad in sight. As she approached the red carpet, all eyes turned, and then narrowed. Her outfit was jarring. A plain white shirt tucked into high-waisted black jeans, covered by an old, worn-out denim jacket. No jewelry. No makeup except maybe a hint of lip balm. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, with strands of it falling loosely around her face. At first, the photographers paused, confused. Then came the flashes, and the laughter. Is that Selena Gomez or a lost intern? Did she lose a bet? Is she broke? The words stung. But Selena kept walking. Head down, eyes forward, hands in her jacket pockets, tightly gripping something no one could see. In the crowd, influencers were already uploading TikToks. Edits flew online. Selena Gomez's fall from grace. From Met Gala to mall girl. She looks homeless. But Selena didn't flinch. What they didn't know was that inside the left pocket of her jacket was a folded letter, written in pencil, by the trembling hand of a little girl named Amira. Just last year, Selena had met Amira during one of her secret hospital visits. Unlike the ones publicized by her team, this one had been personal. She had visited a children's cancer ward without cameras, just to sit with the kids and listen. And that's where she met Amira. 8 years old. Bald from chemotherapy. Eyes too big for her fragile face, but glowing with light. She didn't ask Selena for a selfie. She didn't scream or cry. She handed Selena a sketchbook. "I want to be a fashion designer," she whispered. "And if you ever wear one of my clothes, even just once, I'd be the happiest girl in the world." Inside that sketchbook was a simple drawing, a white tee and a blue denim jacket, with a tiny heart stitched onto the cuff. Selena smiled. And she made a promise. "I'll wear this one day. On the red carpet. Just for you." But weeks passed. Then months. And one day, she got the call. Amira was gone. Selena wept that night. Not in front of fans. Not online. Alone on her kitchen floor, holding the sketchbook in her arms. And now, tonight, this red carpet was not about fame. It was about keeping her word. But none of them knew that. Not the reporters. Not the fans. Not even the friends who had stopped texting her lately. Selena walked into that ballroom with a storm in her chest. But before she could take her seat, a former co-star stopped her. "Selena, what happened to you?" She smiled politely. And for a brief moment, almost broke. But instead, she whispered something only she could hear. "Amira, I kept my promise." The ballroom sparkled like a galaxy of shattered diamonds. Waiters glided across the floor with silver trays, chandeliers burned like frozen suns above the crowd, and every corner echoed with fake laughter and shallow compliments. This was Hollywood charity, where people dressed in six-figure gowns just to be seen caring. Selena stood near the edge of the room, clutching a glass of water she hadn't touched. People stared. Some tried to smile. But most simply avoided her. It was as if her presence, too raw, too human, made them uncomfortable. She glanced at the stage where a famous TV host gave a speech about hope and healing, words that bounced off the walls like rehearsed monologues. None of it felt real. Nothing had since that day. A soft piano tune played from the grand stage. Someone brushed past her shoulder and muttered under their breath, "You could have at least tried tonight." Selena inhaled slowly, turning her head away. Her eyes, already brimming, landed on a small pin fastened inside her jacket. A stitched heart, Amira's signature from the sketch. Crude, childlike, beautiful. It pulled her mind away from the noise. Back to the hospital. Back to the white walls, the smell of alcohol and hand sanitizer, and the sound of beeping machines. Back to her. Amira. She had been wearing a knit beanie when they met, a pale pink one with sequins falling off. But her smile had lit the entire pediatric ward. Selena had slipped in wearing a hoodie and baseball cap, hoping not to be noticed. But Amira recognized her instantly. "You're Selena?" she had whispered. Selena crouched beside her bed. "And you're the most fashionable girl I've seen all day." Amira laughed. "I made this hat." That's when she showed her the sketchbook. Pages full of designs, bows, ruffles, jackets, jeans, even gowns made from crayon-sketched lace. "Are you gonna wear any of these?" she asked. "I'd be honored," Selena replied. But Amira leaned closer, voice low and secretive. "Don't tell anyone. I don't want the other kids to get jealous." Selena promised. They talked for nearly an hour. Amira told her she wanted to design for stars but also for kids in the hospital. Clothes that were comfy and pretty. "No one should look sick just because they are," she had said. That sentence had haunted Selena for months. As she stood there in the ballroom, her fingers brushing the inside of the jacket, she remembered the last time she had seen Amira. The little girl had drawn one final sketch and wrapped it in tissue paper. "I want you to wear it when everyone's watching. Even if they laugh." Selena had promised again. But she never got the chance to call. Amira's condition had worsened too quickly. Weeks later, a quiet letter arrived. No PR team knew about it. No fans. No cameras. Just a brown envelope sealed with a shaky signature. "To Selena, from your smallest designer." Inside, the sketch. The hand-sewn jacket. And a note. "Dear Selena, if you ever feel nervous wearing it, just imagine me beside you. Laughing. Happy. Proud. Because you kept your promise." Selena had read those words at 3 a.m. under her bed covers, tears soaking the note until the ink blurred. She didn't post a thing. She didn't tweet. She mourned in silence. Now, as the crowd continued sipping champagne and posing for selfies, Selena stood in the eye of her own emotional storm. She hadn't worn that jacket for sympathy. She hadn't done it for attention. She had done it because somewhere in another world a little girl was watching. But even she hadn't expected the backlash to be this cruel. From the stage, the host called out, "And now, presenting the humanitarian award to a woman who's always served fashion, on and off the screen." The audience applauded. A famous actress strutted up in a glittering gold dress. People roared. Cameras flashed. The moment sparkled. Selena turned to leave quietly. But someone touched her arm. It was an old woman in the back, clearly not a celebrity. Her name tag read Dr. Eliza Moreno, Pediatric Oncology Unit. "I saw your jacket," she said softly. Selena blinked. "I'm sorry I—" "No, don't apologize," the doctor smiled gently. "That jacket saved Amira." Selena froze. Dr. Eliza continued, "She used to tell every nurse that Selena Gomez would one day wear her design on TV. It gave her a reason to smile even on her worst days. Even when the pain was unbearable." Selena's throat tightened. Her hands trembled. Dr. Eliza touched her wrist again. "She would have loved tonight. You kept her alive, for a little longer." Selena lowered her eyes, lips trembling. And then she hugged the doctor without saying a word. Because sometimes silence holds more love than applause ever could. But as the embrace ended, the doctor leaned in close and whispered something that made Selena's blood run cold. "There's something you need to know. Amira didn't just draw clothes, she kept a diary. And there's something in it. Something only meant for you." Selena's heart pounded. "A diary?" The doctor nodded. "I wasn't supposed to give it away, but I think Amira wanted you to see it. You were more than just a celebrity to her." She slipped a small leather-bound notebook from her handbag. Selena took it with trembling hands. It smelled faintly of lavender and antiseptic. The edges were worn. On the first page, a sticker with glitter letters spelled out, "My secret book for Selena G." And beneath it, in a child's shaky handwriting, "If you're reading this, it means you cared enough to keep your promise." Selena clutched the book to her chest, tears silently tracing down her cheeks. And as the orchestra in the ballroom played louder, she walked away. To read a little girl's secret words. Alone. The door to her penthouse clicked shut behind her. Gone were the spotlights, the murmurs, the flashing cameras. Gone were the whispers, the mocking gazes. Just silence now. Heavy. Still. A silence that wrapped around her like a weighted blanket. Selena stood frozen in the hallway, clutching the small notebook in both hands. The leather was worn, but warm like it had lived many lives in the arms of its owner. She didn't turn on the lights. She didn't kick off her shoes. She simply walked barefoot across the cold marble floor, straight to her couch and sat down. The city glowed beyond her windows. But her world had gone quiet. She placed the book gently in her lap, stared at it, almost afraid to open it. There was a soft shimmer on the cover, as if Amira had decorated it with glitter glue. A tiny pink butterfly sticker clung to one corner. Selena ran her finger over the words again. My secret book for Selena G. She took a breath, then another, and opened the first page. Inside was a letter. No fancy language. No big words. Just the child's truth, raw and innocent. Dear Selena, if you're reading this, then you wore the jacket. I knew you would. You're the kind of person who keeps promises. Mommy says most grown-ups forget, but I told her you're different. I told her, Selena isn't fake. She listens with her heart. Tears welled in Selena's eyes. She kept reading. I made this book just for you. It's got things I couldn't say out loud. Some dreams. Some fears. And one big secret. If you read to the end, you'll understand everything. And maybe you'll find the other girl like me. 'Cause I know she's out there. And she needs you. Selena blinked. Another girl? She turned the page. Sketches filled the next few sheets. Crayon drawings of jackets, dresses, oversized sneakers. Some were inspired by pop stars, others by hospital beds and four poles. There were notes too. This one's for girls who want to twirl but can't get out of bed. This hoodie has a hole for chemo tubes. Make it soft. No itchy stuff. I hate itchy stuff. Selena smiled through her tears. The designs weren't polished, but they were full of heart. Full of purpose. This wasn't just a kid playing dress-up. Amira had been building a world for children like her. Children who still wanted to feel beautiful, even while being poked and prodded by doctors. But then, halfway through the book, the tone shifted. The writing got smaller. The colors darker. A page read, sometimes I get scared. What if I die before I finish everything I want to do? What if no one ever sees my clothes? I don't want to disappear. Selena covered her mouth. Her chest tightened. I think I'm getting worse. But I'm not going to tell Mommy. She cries enough. So I just smile and say I'm okay. I say I'm dreaming of New York Fashion Week. I say I'm going to be fine. But I lie. A lot. I lie so they don't cry. The next page had no drawings. Just 2 lines. Promise me you'll show them my designs. Promise me you won't let them forget me. Selena clutched the book against her chest, the tears finally spilling, hot and silent. Amira hadn't just been a fan. She had been begging not to vanish. Not to be another forgotten child lost to a silent disease. Selena had thought wearing the jacket was enough. But now, she knew. This was only the beginning. She flipped to the final pages. They were messy. Scribbled. Almost rushed. There was a sketch of a girl in a hospital gown, smiling in front of a large crowd. Selena realized it was a fashion show. For sick kids. No models, no celebrities. Just children with scars, bald heads, feeding tubes, and courage. Underneath, Amira had written, if you ever do this, let them walk like they own the stars. Make them feel like they matter. Like they're not sick. Just special. Selena sat back, breath caught in her throat. And then, the last page. It was folded. Taped shut. She hesitated. Her hands trembled as she peeled it open. Inside was one final message. Selena. I heard a nurse say I don't have much time left. But I'm not scared. Not anymore. 'Cause I know you'll wear my jacket. I know you'll read this. And I know you'll find the girl I saw on YouTube. The one with the burnt arms who designs shoes from trash bags. She's like me. Find her. Help her. You'll know what to do. Selena's heart stopped. A girl, with burnt arms? Shoes made from trash bags? She had never heard of such a person. But Amira had. Somehow, through hospital Wi-Fi and old devices, she had seen another child like herself. A kindred soul. An echo of her dream. And now, Amira was passing that dream on. Not just a jacket. Not just a sketchbook. But a mission. Selena stood up. Wiped her face. She turned on her laptop and began searching. Burn survivor, child designer, shoes from trash. Nothing at first. She refined the words. Dug deeper. Then finally, a blurry video from Southeast Asia. A girl no older than 10, sitting in a slum alleyway with scarred arms, taping plastic together to make sandals. The title was simple. Little Angel makes shoes for her friends from garbage. Selena clicked. The video buffered. And what she saw next. shook her to her very core. The screen flickered. Pixelated at first, but then, there she was. A little girl sitting cross-legged on a cracked concrete floor, surrounded by plastic bottles, wires, and old rubber soles. Her arms were wrapped in faded white bandages. Scars peeked through where the cloth had loosened. Her face was thin, sun-kissed, and radiant with the kind of light that doesn't come from comfort, but from resilience. She was smiling. Genuinely smiling. The title of the video hadn't lied. This was an angel. Selena leaned in closer as the camera zoomed gently on the girl's hands. They moved with purpose and skill. She was weaving strips of old garbage bags into the shape of sandals, layering them with foam pieces, sewing them with thread she pulled from discarded curtains. The background was loud, the honk of tuk-tuks, the chatter of street vendors, and children laughing in languages Selena couldn't understand. But the narration was clear, added by a local aid volunteer. Meet Anjani, age 10. A burn survivor from the 2019 market fire in Jakarta. She lost her family, her home, and almost her life. But instead of begging, she began making shoes out of trash for kids who had less than she did. Today, she's known as the shoe angel of Slum Alley. Selena's breath caught. This was her. This was the girl Amira had mentioned. She clicked through every related video. Dozens of short clips, most of them with under 1,000 views. One showed Anjani handing out her makeshift shoes to barefoot children during the rainy season. Another showed her laughing as she painted smiley faces on the toes of her creations. But then, a quiet one. Only 47 views. Titled, Why I Make Shoes, Anjani Speaks. Selena clicked. The video opened with Anjani looking straight into the camera. Her eyes were wide, honest, and a little nervous. Behind her was a curtain made from old tarp, swaying gently in the breeze. I don't want to be famous, she said softly in broken English. I just want the children here not to hurt their feet. Because when your feet hurt, your heart hurts too. Selena felt her throat tighten. Anjani continued. I used to think I would die in that fire. I screamed and screamed but no one heard me. Then one nurse said I'm lucky to be alive. But sometimes, I don't feel lucky. I feel forgotten. The words echoed like thunder. But one day, Anjani added, I saw a girl on my tablet. She was in hospital too. She made clothes. She smiled even when she was sick. Her name was Amina? Amiri? She struggled with the pronunciation then giggled. I wish I could meet her. Maybe she'd wear my shoes. Selena's heart shattered. Amira and Anjani had seen each other through digital shadows. Two forgotten souls who found light in one another. One gone. The other waiting. Selena paused the video. Her hands were trembling. Her body felt electric, like every nerve had been plugged into some divine current. She knew what she had to do. This wasn't charity. This wasn't PR. This wasn't about redemption. It was about legacy. Selena reached for her phone. Dialed the only person she trusted for something this intimate. Lena, her former assistant, now living in Singapore. Lena, it's me, she said, voice unsteady. Selena? The voice replied groggily. It's almost 4 a.m. What's going on? I need your help. I need to find a little girl in Jakarta. Her name is Anjani. She's a burn survivor and makes shoes out of trash. I just watched her videos. She knows about Amira. There was a long pause. You mean, Amira? The little designer girl? Yes. She's gone, right? Selena didn't answer. Lena exhaled. I'll find her. Give me 24 hours. Selena hung up. She placed her phone down and stared back at the paused image of Anjani on the screen. Something inside her shifted. Not sadness. Not guilt. Purpose. Amira's story wasn't ending in a notebook. And Anjani's story wasn't meant to remain buried in the slums. Selena walked to her closet. Flung it open. Stared at rows of designer shoes. Dozens of them. Never worn. All perfect. All useless now. She grabbed 2 pairs, put them in a box, and labeled it with shaking hands. For Anjani. From Selena. Keep dreaming. Then, as dawn crept through the windows, painting her living room in gold and gray, she reopened the sketchbook. There was one page she hadn't seen. Folded, taped to the back cover. She peeled it open and gasped. It was a joint drawing. 2 girls, one bald, one scarred. One holding a denim jacket. The other holding shoes made of stars. And beneath it, in shaky handwriting, she's out there. Tell her I believe in her. Tell her. I saw her. The airport lounge was quiet at dawn. Selena sat in a corner booth, face hidden behind oversized sunglasses and a baseball cap. Her jacket, the one Amira made, was folded carefully in her lap. She didn't bring a team. No security, no stylists. Just herself, a carry-on bag, and a heart full of memories. Her flight to Jakarta left in 2 hours. Lena had delivered. Less than a day after the call, she sent Selena a video. It wasn't public. It wasn't polished. It was a clip recorded on a donated phone, shaky and raw, showing Anjani sitting on a wooden bench, sewing a pair of sandals for a boy with one leg. She lives in a flood-prone slum behind Pasir Sipinang, Lena had said over the voice message. I spoke to a volunteer. She's hard to reach. No school. No proper address. But she's still making shoes every day. Selena didn't hesitate. She booked the flight herself. The first-class seat felt wrong. Too soft. Too clean. She kept thinking of Amira in her hospital bed, and Anjani sitting in muddy water stitching dreams into rubber. Her world, the one of fame and privilege, felt disgusting now. Obscene. She stared out the window as Los Angeles shrank behind her. And for the first time in a long time, she felt human again. Jakarta greeted her with heat. Thick, sticky, heavy. The moment she stepped out of the airport, she was hit by the sounds, horns, engines, the cries of vendors selling fruit, toys, even cigarettes. Lena met her outside in a simple t-shirt and jeans, eyes wide with concern. You really came, she said, voice shaky. I had to, Selena replied. They didn't go to a hotel. Instead, they headed straight toward East Jakarta, winding through traffic in a small blue car driven by a local volunteer. The roads narrowed the deeper they went. Concrete gave way to mud, high-rises to metal shacks. Children ran barefoot across puddles. Old women sold fried tofu on paper trays. Laundry hung like flags between wooden poles. And then the driver stopped. This is the place, he said. Selena stepped out. Before her stood a long, narrow alley, crowded with makeshift homes and smells of cooking oil and damp clothes. The stench of rot mixed with the scent of burning plastic. And yet, it pulsed with life. Lena pointed toward a tarp hanging over a wooden doorway. She lives there. With a cousin. Selena took a deep breath and approached. She didn't knock. There was no door to knock on. She called softly, Anjani? A small rustle inside. Then silence. Again, Anjani? My name is Selena. Selena Gomez. I came to see you. The tarp pulled back. And there she was. Tiny. Wide-eyed. Thinner than she looked in the videos. Her arms were covered in gauze. Her clothes were too big. But her eyes were pure wonder. You're real? Anjani whispered. Selena knelt slowly. Yes. And so are you. Anjani looked like she might cry but held it in. She looked at Lena, then at Selena again and said almost shyly, Did Amira send you? Selena's voice cracked. She did. Anjani nodded. I thought so. I saw her, in my dream. She told me you were coming. Selena held out the jacket. Anjani stared at it, hands shaking. Then she reached out and gently touched the stitched heart. She wore it, didn't she? Yes, Selena whispered. And she wanted you to have something. Selena opened her bag and pulled out a clean pair of shoes. Real shoes. Beautiful, simple sneakers, white, soft-soled with a tiny red butterfly on the heel. Anjani's eyes widened. She placed her handmade shoes aside and hugged the new ones like a doll. But I didn't do anything yet, she said. Selena took both of her small hands. Yes, you did, she replied. You survived. You created. You inspired. And now we're going to do something bigger. Together. Anjani looked up, confused. Selena smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'm starting a project. A fashion line. But not with big designers. With you. With kids like you. Sick kids. Hurt kids. Brave kids. We're going to show the world what beauty really is. For the first time, Anjani let her tears fall. Will Amira see it? Selena placed her hand over Anjani's heart. She already is. Suddenly, children started gathering around them. Dozens of little ones, all barefoot, all curious. They whispered, giggled, pointed. One boy said, She's the TV lady. Another asked, Why is she hugging Anjani? Selena turned and looked at them all. Then, slowly she stood up. I'm not here to be seen, she said softly. I'm here to see you. The alley fell silent. Selena turned to Anjani again. Let's make them shoes. Let's make them clothes. Let's make them feel seen. Anjani nodded, slowly as a smile broke through the tears. And just like that, a new dream began. Not in a studio. Not in Hollywood. But in the narrow alley behind a forgotten market. Where two girls, one gone, one burning bright, were about to change the world. Morning in the slums of East Jakarta began not with alarm clocks, but with the clatter of plastic buckets, the cry of street vendors and roosters crowing from the tops of rusted rooftops. The sky above was a dirty shade of blue, lined with tangled power lines and torn tarps. But this morning, something felt different. Selena sat cross-legged on a bamboo mat beside Anjani, surrounded by scraps of fabric, broken scissors and string. She looked nothing like the pop star the world remembered. No makeup. Her denim jacket rolled up at the sleeves. Sweat sticking to her forehead. But her smile, calm, tender, unwavering, was the same as ever. Anjani held up a piece of pink plastic. "This one," she said, "used to be a rice bag. I'm turning it into a dress for Putri." Selena watched as Anjani folded the material with surprising precision. Despite her burns, her hands moved fast, steady, careful. A child of fire building clothes from trash. Every cut, every stitch, every idea came from survival. "Putri," Anjani said, pointing to a small girl with crutches, "wants to walk like a queen." Selena looked at the girl, barefoot, legs thin as broomsticks, one foot wrapped in a rag. "She will," Selena whispered. "She will." By noon the alley had transformed. Word had spread like wildfire. Selena Gomez was here, and she wasn't just visiting. She was building something. Children poured in from nearby blocks. Volunteers brought used clothes, scissors, needles, thread, even colorful umbrellas to shield the area from the sun. They tied ropes between poles and hung the clothes Anjani had made like makeshift fashion racks. Empty shoeboxes became display pedestals. Broken mirrors were propped against bricks. The alley became a runway. Anjani stood beside Selena, a notebook in her hand. The same kind Amira once held. Inside were sketches. Not of models. Not of celebrities. But of her friends. Each with their names, their conditions, and their outfits made from nothing but scraps. Faisal. He only has one eye but likes bright colors. Aya. She's deaf but loves pockets. Lots of them. Putri. She can't walk far, so her dress needs to be light. Selena stared at the drawings, stunned. They were more than art. They were blueprints of dignity. Anjani had done this without recognition. Without money. Without praise. Just the belief that children deserved to feel like more than just victims of poverty. And now, Selena would make sure the world saw it. She picked up her phone. Not to scroll. Not to record a video of herself. She opened her live streaming app, something she hadn't used in over a year. The screen blinked. "Go live?" it asked. She tapped yes. Within seconds, thousands of notifications exploded across her screen. Selena Gomez is live. Breaking. Selena from Jakarta slum? What is happening? She turned the camera to Anjani, who was helping a boy into a pair of handmade sandals decorated with bottle caps. "This," Selena said, voice cracking, "is the most important fashion show of my life." The camera panned across the alley. Children twirling in plastic skirts. Boys wearing shirts with patches of cartoon bedsheets. Girls giggling in oversized flip-flops painted with flowers. And at the center of it all, Anjani barefoot, arms still bandaged, beaming like she'd just lit up the whole city. Selena continued, "This is Anjani. She survived a fire. Lost her family. But she chose to create beauty in a place where the world sees nothing but trash. And today, I'm asking you to help us show that beauty to the world." Comments flooded the stream. "OMG, this is amazing. Is she really there? How can we donate? I'm crying. Protect Anjani at all costs." Selena smiled. "Amira, if you're watching from up there, your dream didn't die. It just found new hands." And then she pointed to a long piece of red fabric stretched between the alley walls. "This is our runway." She handed the phone to Lena. Then looked at Anjani. "Are you ready?" Anjani grinned, cheeks flushed, eyes glowing. "I was born ready." The music was played from an old speaker. A remix of traditional gamelan and slow hip-hop beats. The children lined up, each one more nervous than the last. But as the first model stepped forward, limping but smiling, the alley erupted in cheers. Neighbors watched from rooftops. Vendors stopped pushing carts. Even passing bikers slowed down. They watched these kids, wounded, overlooked, forgotten, walk like royalty. Putri came next, crutches and all, in her pink rice bag gown. Faisal followed, waving proudly with his bright yellow cape. One by one they took their steps. Each wobble, each scar, each crooked smile told a story no Hollywood runway ever could. And when Anjani stepped forward, in shoes made of white ribbon and denim scraps, her arms still wrapped in bandages, Selena clapped louder than anyone. Because she wasn't watching a fashion show. She was watching a revolution. The alley didn't sleep that night. Not even for a moment. Children sat around candlelight, cutting, gluing, painting more shoes and clothes. The buzz was electric. Selena, though exhausted, felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. Not from applause. Not from trending hashtags. But from purpose. She sat cross-legged next to Anjani, who was sketching on cardboard torn from an old box. Her tongue poked out slightly in concentration as she shaded a pair of slippers made from bubble wrap and bicycle tire treads. "You think people will still care tomorrow?" she asked quietly. Selena didn't answer right away. She looked out across the alley, now transformed into a living dream, colorful clothes hanging from wires, tiny mannequins made of water bottles standing guard near makeshift sewing tables, and children curled up in corners, hugging their new shoes like teddy bears. "I don't know," she finally said. "But I do know one thing." Anjani looked up. "I won't let them forget you. Ever." By morning the world had already changed. Selena's live stream from the alley exploded. Within 12 hours, it had over 10 million views. Celebrities reposted it. Designers reacted. News anchors around the globe said her name for the first time in months. But now, with admiration instead of ridicule. But more importantly, donations started pouring in. People weren't just watching. They were giving. Messages flooded the inboxes of Lena and the volunteers. "I want to help Anjani. My daughter is a cancer survivor. Can she join? I have a sewing machine. Where can I send it? Can I buy a pair of the sandals from the video?" Selena's inbox was a wall of love. But one message caught her eye. A name she hadn't heard in years. Chiara Lucenti, the creative director of Maison Livia, one of the most elite European fashion houses in the world. Selena had worn their gowns at the Met Gala. Their dresses cost more than cars. And yet, Chiara's email was simple. "Selena, I cried watching your stream. We need to talk. I want to bring this story to Paris." Selena's hands trembled as she read the rest. "I don't mean a donation. I mean a runway. A real one. We'll fly the children in. You and Anjani can co-direct. The world needs to see what true beauty looks like. Let's make history." Selena looked up from her screen. Anjani was trying to glue sparkles onto a flip-flop. The bottle kept getting stuck. Her fingers were trembling slightly. Selena knelt beside her. "Anjani, how would you feel about going to Paris?" Anjani blinked. "Like, Paris? In France?" "Yes." She froze. "But, I've never even left this alley." Selena smiled. "Then it's time the world finally comes to you." The next few weeks were a blur. Selena and Lena worked around the clock coordinating with Chiara's team. The logistics were overwhelming. Passports had to be arranged. Doctors approved travel for the most fragile children. Volunteers trained as travel chaperones. And Anjani? Well, she couldn't sleep. Every night she drew new designs. Dozens of them. For every child. For herself. Even one inspired by Amira's original sketch. Selena named the line, "The Forgotten Angels." And together they prepared to take it global. But there was one thing Selena hadn't told anyone. Not even Anjani. Inside the sketchbook Amira had left her, there had been a final folded paper, buried in the spine. Was a letter. Sealed with a red sticker shaped like a broken heart. Read. "Do not open until the last runway walk." Selena had kept it tucked in her wallet. She hadn't touched it. Not yet. It felt sacred. Like Amira was still speaking, guiding her steps, holding her hand through every moment. And now, that moment was coming. The private jet touched down in France just past sunrise. For most of the kids, it was the first time seeing clouds from above. The first time eating something with more than 2 ingredients. The first time sleeping on soft beds. Anjani was quiet as the plane landed, staring out the window. Selena leaned over. "Nervous?" Anjani shrugged. "I just want to make her proud." Selena swallowed hard. "She already is." They arrived at the venue 3 days before the show, a historic opera house in Paris, now transformed into a fashion sanctuary. Chiara herself welcomed them, her elegant hands trembling as she embraced Anjani and said through tears, "You remind me why I started." Backstage was chaos. Lights. Sound checks. Fittings. But Anjani moved like a queen. She led the team. Chose music. Adjusted stitches. She even comforted a boy who cried after tearing his pants. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a leader. And Selena? She didn't perform. She didn't model. She stood quietly behind the curtain, watching the children shine. Because this wasn't about her anymore. This was their runway. On the night of the show, the opera house was packed. Fashion critics, celebrities, ambassadors, even children from local hospitals were bussed in. The lights dimmed. Music swelled. And from the shadows, the first child stepped into the spotlight. The crowd gasped. Not because of beauty, but because of truth. These children, scars, braces, missing limbs, burned skin, walked with heads high, wearing outfits made from nothing but waste, stitched with love and designed from dreams. And when Anjani walked out last in a gown made of repurposed lace and denim, holding a single shoe that Amira had designed, the entire room stood up. Tears flowed. Applause thundered. History was made. But Selena didn't clap right away. She reached into her bag, pulled out the final letter, and with trembling fingers, she opened it. Dear Selena, you did it. You gave us a stage. You gave her wings. And now you've made the whole world see what we always saw. Love. Real love. Don't cry for me. I'm not gone. I'm in every stitch, every smile, every step they take. And now, it's your turn to walk. Love, Amira. Selena looked up, eyes filled with tears. And for the first time since that cold red carpet months ago, she walked out beside Anjani, hand in hand, as the children behind them followed. No longer forgotten, no longer mocked, but remembered. Sing. Home. The next morning the world woke up changed. It wasn't just fashion headlines that led the news, it was everything. Mainstream media, lifestyle blogs, even political pundits talked about it. Selena Gomez shocks Paris with children of the slum runway. From burn victim to fashion star, meet Indonesia's 10-year-old genius. This wasn't a show. It was a statement. And across social media, a single clip went viral, again and again. Anjani walking confidently under golden lights, holding Amira's jacket folded gently in her arms, her face full of quiet strength. Behind her, the children waved to the crowd, still wearing shoes made from garbage bags and bottle caps. The world had never seen a fashion show like this before. And they knew they never would again. Back in her hotel room, Selena stood in front of the mirror, brushing her fingers across her cheeks, red and raw from crying. She hadn't slept. Not because of nerves, but because her heart refused to settle. There was a knock on her door. Lena entered, her face lit with a rare smile. You might want to see this, she said, handing over a thick envelope. Selena frowned. What is it? Official invitation. From the UN. Selena opened the letter slowly. Inside was an embossed card with gold lettering. You are hereby invited to speak at the Global Summit on Children's Health and Human Dignity. Topic: Beauty from Broken Places. She blinked. The UN? She sat down heavily. Lena chuckled. Turns out, people are finally seeing what you've been trying to say. Selena shook her head. I didn't say anything, Lena. They did. The kids. Anjani. Amira. And that, Lena whispered, is exactly why they're listening. Later that afternoon, Selena joined the children and volunteers in the hotel's ballroom-turned-playroom. Anjani was sitting cross-legged on the floor, helping a French girl try on recycled slippers. Anjani, Selena said softly, do you want to come with me to New York? The girl looked up. For another show? No, Selena smiled. For something bigger. A speech. To speak to the world. Together. Anjani tilted her head. What would I say? Selena knelt. Whatever your heart wants. Anjani was quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered, okay. Back in Los Angeles a week later, the mood had shifted completely. People no longer whispered behind Selena's back. They stood when she entered. They watched, listened, admired. But she hadn't returned to receive anything. She returned with a mission. The first official announcement came through a live stream, this time not from an alley, but from her own foundation's headquarters. Today, Selena said calmly into the camera, we're launching something called the Amira Project. A global initiative to support sick and disadvantaged children who use art and design to heal and survive. This isn't about charity. This is about legacy. Behind her, Anjani stood quietly, now wearing a custom blouse embroidered with hundreds of names. Names of children who had contributed drawings, clothes, or dreams. The screen flickered to a photo of Amira's notebook. Her final sketch. The one of the two girls. One bald. One scarred. The image had become iconic. Printed in magazines. Used in educational programs. Even graffitied on walls in cities far from where either girl was born. This was not just a campaign. It was a movement. But as momentum grew, so did the pressure. Some questioned Selena's intentions. One journalist asked during a press conference, "Are you using these children to save your image?" Selena didn't flinch. "No," she answered, steady. "I'm letting them save mine." Silence. Cameras clicked. Her honesty disarmed even the harshest critics. That night, she opened her inbox. Among the countless messages was a video sent anonymously. No subject. No caption. Just a link. She hesitated. Then clicked. It opened with grainy footage, handheld, unstable. A hospital room. Quiet. Fluorescent lights. And there, sitting upright in bed, was Amira. Selena gasped. The girl looked thin, paler than she remembered, but her eyes sparkled with a fierce light. She was holding a phone. "Hi Selena," the video began. "I don't know if this will reach you. Maybe mommy will send it. Or maybe it'll get lost. But just in case." She smiled weakly. "I wanted to say, thank you. For not forgetting me. For not letting them forget me." Selena covered her mouth, heart pounding. "I don't know how long I have. But I'm not scared. Because even if I go, you'll still be out there. Doing what we dreamed of. Maybe there's a girl out there with no hair, no hope, and a broken sketchbook, and maybe you'll find her too." She coughed. "Art." But continued. "You once told me stories matter more than clothes. And now you're turning us into stories. That means I get to live, even after." The screen glitched. Then froze. Selena stared at the final frame, Amira's eyes wide and smiling, staring straight into hers. That night, Selena didn't cry. She wrote. Plans. Programs. Dreams. She would build art schools inside hospitals. Sponsor scholarships for young designers in war zones. Create mobile sewing centers for disaster areas. And she would name every space after Amira. Because she wasn't done. Not yet. Not until the whole world understood that real beauty isn't found on runways, but in survival, sacrifice, and the souls of children who refuse to give up. New York City was its usual storm of noise. Taxi horns. Screeching tires. People yelling into phones while dodging pigeons and tourists. It was everything Anjani had never known, everything Amira had only dreamed about. But now, Anjani was here, not as a refugee, not as a burn survivor, not even as a child in need. She was here as a speaker, a storyteller, a leader. Selena walked beside her, holding her hand tightly as they stepped into the towering United Nations building. She wore Amira's jacket again, not because she needed the attention, but because Amira deserved to be present in that room. The air was heavy with power and politics. Delegates passed by in sharp suits, some staring, others ignoring. But none of it shook Anjani. Her shoes, still handmade, tapped confidently against the polished floor. They were led into the main assembly hall. The theme of the summit? Children as architects of peace. Perfect. Anjani was ushered backstage. Selena stood in the wings, watching her little sister in spirit straighten her note cards, one finger tracing the line of a drawing she'd glued to the front, Amira's face with wings. Lena whispered from behind, "We don't have to do this if she's not ready." Selena shook her head. "She's more ready than all of us." The speaker before her was a tech CEO discussing virtual classrooms. Applause. Polite nods. Then the host announced, "Now please welcome Anjani Ramawati, co-founder of the Amira project. 10 years old." Whispers buzzed across the room. "A child. Here." Anjani walked slowly to the podium, the mic towering above her. A technician lowered it. She placed her note cards carefully, glanced at Selena once, then faced the room. She cleared her throat. "My name is Anjani. I'm from Jakarta. I used to live in an alley near a market that burned down. That fire took my parents, and my skin, and my dreams." The room fell silent. "I didn't go to school. I made shoes out of trash so other kids didn't have to walk barefoot. I didn't think anyone would care. But one day, someone did. Her name was Amira. She was sick too. She never met me. But she believed in me. And because she believed, Selena found me." Murmurs again. Cameras clicked. "Now I make shoes and clothes for children who are hurt, sick, or forgotten. We don't use expensive things. We use what people throw away. Because even garbage can become beautiful. Just like us." Selena felt tears rise, but she didn't blink them away. Anjani's voice grew firmer. "I don't need pity. I need scissors, needles, paint. I need leaders to remember kids like us. Kids in refugee camps. Kids in hospitals. Kids under rubble. We don't want to be saved. We want to create." The audience leaned in. "And if you don't help us do that, then we will do it without you." Gasp. Then applause. It began softly. One delegate. Then another. Until the hall echoed with clapping hands and rising voices. Anjani stood there motionless. Then she added softly, "Thank you. And thank you, Amira." She stepped down. Selena rushed forward, wrapping her in an embrace. "You were perfect," she whispered. Anjani whispered back, "I felt her. She was here." The next morning headlines exploded again. 10-year-old burn survivor silences world leaders. From slums to summit, how trash shoes became global symbols. Selena Gomez's new legacy, a generation of child creators. But amidst the press and praise, something else began to shift. A phone call came in from a South African journalist. He said, "There's a boy in Soweto who makes backpacks from old tires. He watched the stream. Can he join?" A hospital in Colombia reached out. "We have a girl who paints flowers on 4 poles. She's too shy to speak, but she's been asking if she can send her art to you." Selena's voice broke as she replied, "Yes. Send them all." The Amira project's inbox overflowed. Not just with donations, but dreams, drawings, poems, songs, sketches, children from war zones, from cancer wards, from underground shelters. Each one saying the same thing. "I want to be seen." And they would be. Because Selena, Anjani, and the legacy of a quiet girl in a hospital bed had built something that could no longer be ignored. They didn't just make fashion. They made space. Space for pain. Space for survival. Space for children the world tried to overlook. That night, Selena stood on a rooftop, Amira's jacket over her shoulders, Anjani asleep inside beside Lena, cradling a notebook full of new designs. She looked up at the stars. "Did you see her?" she whispered. No one answered. But the wind rose, soft, gentle, like a breath against her skin. And for the first time, Selena didn't feel lost. She felt found. Not by fame, but by purpose. And somewhere far above, beyond the clouds, beyond the pain, beyond the noise, a little girl smiled. Because her voice, once nearly silenced, had now become a symphony. The Amira project had become more than just a movement. It had become a lifeline. Within months of the UN speech, new chapters of the project were sprouting across continents. Tiny workshops in forgotten neighborhoods. Children gathering in hospital wards with crayons and needles. Volunteers in refugee camps printing coloring sheets based on Anjani's designs. And everywhere, scissors snipping. Threads tying broken pieces into beauty. But something unexpected began to happen. Letters. Hundreds at first. Then thousands. Handwritten. Type. Scribbled in shaky handwriting or dictated by nurses. Letters from children and parents. From orphanages. From remote villages where the internet barely reached. Each one telling a story. Of pain. Of survival. Of hope. Of Amira. They came in torn envelopes and email attachments, in boxes wrapped with duct tape, in folded tissues with messages scrawled in pencil. Selena read them all. Some at her desk. Some while flying. Some crying alone in her room. One letter from a boy in Ukraine missing both legs read, "When I wear my Amira sandals, I forget that I lost my feet." Another from a girl in Gaza whispered, "I make necklaces from rubble. Amira taught me that broken things can shine." And from a cancer ward in Brazil, "I never met Amira, but she gave me back my dream. Thank you for giving her to the world." Selena was overwhelmed. She couldn't keep these words locked away in storage or screens. They deserved to be worn. To walk. To breathe. She called Anjani late one night, excitement in her voice. "I have an idea," she said. 3 months later, the plan was revealed at a press event in Geneva. Selena stood behind the podium, Anjani by her side. "We're preparing for our next global showcase," she announced. "But this time, the star of the runway won't be a celebrity or even a child." The room leaned in. "This time," she continued, "the star will be a dress. A single dress. Stitched entirely from the words sent by children across the world." Yes. She held up a piece of prototype fabric, soft cotton paper treated and layered, covered in tiny, careful handwriting. Every letter matters. Every sentence. Every tear-stained word. This is their story, sewn together. She looked down at Anjani. "And she's designing it." Anjani blushed but raised her chin. "It will be called the Voice Dress." They worked for weeks, then months. Not in fashion studios, but in schools, hospitals, shelters. The letters were printed on durable, flexible fabric-like paper. They were cut into panels, woven together by hand. Each one treated carefully, not to erase the smudges, the uneven lines, the tear stains. Selena read them aloud as they worked. One line echoed again and again. "Please don't forget me." Anjani stitched that phrase in gold thread at the bottom hem. And over her heart, stitched in red, "Amira lives here." The design was unlike anything the fashion world had ever seen. Not glamorous, not flashy, but alive, full of fingerprints, breath, soul. The showcase was set for Tokyo. Why Tokyo? Because that's where a hospital had sent the very first letter. It came from a 6-year-old girl named Naomi, who had leukemia and loved to draw girls with wings. Her letter had said, "When I grow up, I want to be an angel like Amira. But maybe I don't have to wait that long." Naomi passed away 2 weeks later. Her parents donated her crayons to the project. Selena had kept them. And now they would color the background of the Tokyo stage. The night of the showcase, the world watched. Over 100 countries streamed the event live. Every major network covered it. Even the cynical critics showed up, not for fashion, but for truth. The venue was silent as the lights dimmed. Then a single spotlight. And the dress appeared. Floating slowly down the runway, carried gently by 2 children who had lost their legs. Behind them, the rest of the stage bloomed, LED lights displaying lines from the letters, shifting every few seconds. "I'm still here. I made this from nothing. She saved me. I'm not broken. Love is louder. Amira. Amira. Amira." The crowd didn't clap. They wept. Because it wasn't just a dress. It was a monument made of whispers. And when Anjani stepped out, holding a small pair of sandals wrapped in Amira's original sketch, the world finally understood. These weren't fashion statements. They were lifelines. Knotted together by children the world had tried to silence. After the show, a journalist asked Selena, "Do you think this movement will last?" She smiled. "It already has. Because once a child finds their voice, the world can never unhear it." She held up the sandals. "And we still have many more stories to walk through." Months passed. The Amira project had become a household name in places no one expected. Remote mountain villages, prison reform programs, refugee education centers, and even underground shelters in war zones. The dress made of letters had been archived in a glass case inside the UN building in Geneva, now titled "When Children Lead." But despite the global attention, Selena remained grounded. She continued visiting shelters. She kept her promises. She read every single letter. Until one day, a box arrived. No return address. No note. Just a child's drawing taped to the lid. A girl with rainbow hair holding a brush like a sword. Selena opened the box gently. Inside, a spiral-bound notebook filled with pages so vibrant they almost burned her eyes. Paint streaks. Explosions of color. Fingerprints. Tears dried in blue smudges. There were no words, just images. Dozens of them. But on the last page, a small scribble. "I don't speak with my mouth. I speak with my colors. Sofia, age 9. Selena's chest tightened. No other information. No country. No contact. She immediately sent the artwork to Anjani. The reply came quickly, "She's just like me. We have to find her." The search began. It took weeks. Lena contacted their partner organizations. Volunteers scoured letters, social pages, donation forms. The only clue? One torn label inside the box. Istanbul Distribution Center 14. That was enough. Through a series of calls and connections, they finally tracked down a community center near the Syrian border. There, a volunteer remembered a girl named Sofia, mute, likely traumatized, who painted in silence and left behind scraps of art when her mother relocated for medical help. They found her again in a UN-funded housing block on the outskirts of Ankara. Sofia didn't speak when Selena arrived. She didn't smile. Didn't react. But when she was handed a fresh sketch pad and a cup of watercolors, she painted. First a shoe. Then a heart. Then a pair of hands holding a sun. Selena watched in awe. "She's telling us she remembers what warmth feels like," she whispered. That night, Selena invited Sofia to join the project. Not just as a participant, but as a featured colorist for the next showcase, The Palette of Pain. It would be a new exhibition, built entirely around children who communicated through visual language. Painting, sculpture, graffiti, even recycled object art. No words. Just feeling. And at the center? Sofia. Anjani arrived 2 weeks later to help guide the project. She and Sofia connected instantly, without language, without effort. They'd sit side by side for hours, one sketching shoes, the other splashing color beside them. They didn't need to speak. They understood each other. Selena watched in quiet admiration. Two girls from opposite ends of the earth, both scarred in different ways, building a new kind of bridge. One of fabric and fire. The other of silence and sunlight. Sofia eventually handed Selena a canvas. The background was deep red. In the center, a girl with stitched arms was handing a glowing sandal to another girl covered in stars. Selena stared at it. What is this? Anjani translated the title Sofia had signed in her own way, pointing to a corner. It's called Passing the Promise. Selena felt her throat close up. That was exactly what Amira had done. Pass the promise. Not just to Selena. Not just to Anjani. But to all of them. The exhibition launched in Berlin. No runway. No speeches. Just a wide, dim room filled with hanging lights and whispers of music. Each child's work was displayed in silence. Paintings. Sculptures. Paper shoes. Doll-sized outfits made from torn newspapers. Sofia's work was displayed across the main wall. Dozens of pieces titled with symbols and colors, each evoking something impossible to name but instantly felt. Visitors wept. Not because of tragedy but because of transformation. Because of what happens when the world stops talking and starts listening. That night after the event closed, Selena sat with Anjani and Sofia in a quiet backroom. There were no cameras. No microphones. Just the three of them and a soft radio playing an old Indonesian lullaby. Selena turned to the girls. I want to ask you something, she said gently. Sofia looked up. Anjani tilted her head. What if I stepped back? Anjani frowned. What do you mean? Selena's voice trembled. What if you led the next project? You and Sofia. The kids. I'll support it. Fund it. Be there when you need. But maybe, it's your time now. Silence. Then Sofia stood. She didn't speak. She painted, on Selena's arm with her finger dipped in leftover paint. A single symbol, a golden sun wrapped in two smaller stars. Anjani smiled. She says yes. Selena exhaled. Not with sadness. But with peace. Because movements don't survive by staying in one voice. They survive when voices multiply. And tonight, under the soft light of a Berlin sky, two young girls, once forgotten, stood ready to lead the world forward. One with thread. One with color. Both with fire. The next invitation came from Nairobi. A letter written by a volunteer nurse at a trauma center read, There's a boy here who walks barefoot through the dump every day. He makes kites out of bones and wire. His name is Elikem. He doesn't speak much. But when he runs it feels like he's flying. I think, he's someone you should meet. Selena paused after reading it. She told herself she was ready to step back, to pass the torch to Anjani and Sofia. But something about that letter pulled at her chest. Maybe it was the word fly. Maybe it was the thought of bones being used for joy instead of pain. Maybe it was the line, he walks barefoot through the dump. She called Anjani. There's a boy, she said softly. Where? Anjani asked. Kenya. When do we leave? The road to Dandora, the largest dump site in Nairobi, was a haze of dust and heat. Anjani stared out the window, her hand tracing invisible patterns on the glass, while Sofia sat beside her with a sketchbook, already drawing what she imagined the boy might look like. The smell hit them first, acrid, heavy like burnt rubber and rot. The car slowed as they entered a maze of garbage mountains. And then, in the distance, a boy sprinting barefoot across the top of a trash hill, chasing something soaring through the sky. A kite. Its wings were plastic, bones as its frame, string made from electrical wire. He ran like he wasn't chasing it, but pulling it. Selena stepped out of the car. Elikem, she called out. The boy paused. He looked no older than 10, his ribs visible under his torn shirt. His legs were scarred. But his eyes gleamed like lightning. Sure. Defiant. Unbreakable. He didn't answer. He simply walked toward them barefoot holding the kite. Then he handed it to Selena. The string was burned into his fingers. But his hands didn't shake. Selena knelt. Did you make this? He nodded once. It's beautiful. He pointed at the sky, then to the garbage, then to himself. Anjani stepped forward. He's saying even broken wings can fly. Selena looked up at the kite again. It was torn, imperfect, stitched with thread pulled from someone's thrown-out trousers. But it was still flying. Just like him. They spent the next 4 days with Elikem and the other children who lived near the dump. Some had never owned shoes. Most had never touched a crayon. Yet they created everything. Bags from rice sacks, jewelry from bottle caps, skirts from potato sacks. Elikem had a secret stash. Underneath a rusted tin roof, he'd hidden a pile of shoes, some missing soles, others tied with wire, each one customized with objects he'd found. Selena gasped when she saw them. They weren't just survival gear. They were art pieces. One pair had tiny plastic windows on the toes. Another had bottle caps that jingled like bells. One even had drawings etched into rubber, symbols and lines like a forgotten language. Selena turned to Anjani. What if this is the next exhibit? Anjani's eyes lit up. Not just wearable art, she said, but walking stories. They flew Elikem and 6 other children to Italy, where a Milan-based gallery offered to host the next show. The name? Souls Without Borders. Each child's creation was displayed like sacred artifacts. No pedestals, just long pathways where visitors could walk beside the shoes, reading the stories of those who made them. But the centerpiece was Elikem's sky trail. Suspended from the ceiling, dozens of his bone-framed kites hovered above the space, all attached to a pair of hand-carved sandals, his very first, gifted to him by a volunteer 2 years before. Selena stood beneath the installation the night before the opening, watching the kites sway. He turned pain into wings, she whispered. Anjani stood beside her. And now we make sure the world sees how high he flies. On opening night, dignitaries and artists walked barefoot through the gallery in solidarity. It was Anjani's idea. Sofia painted the soles of the gallery floor with temporary murals, so every step left color behind. But Elikem? He stayed silent. He simply walked. No shoes. Just his feet against the earth. Against the art. Against history. When a journalist tried to interview him, he offered only one answer, by drawing with his finger on the dusty window. I don't speak to cameras. I speak to wind. Selena watched him disappear around the corner, his kite in hand, and knew, this child, like Amira, like Anjani, like Sofia, didn't need saving. He needed to be amplified. Weeks later, back in Los Angeles, a letter arrived. It was from a girl in rural Mexico who had seen a YouTube clip of the Milan exhibit. Inside the envelope was a single worn sock. And a note. I don't have shoes. But if you teach me, I'll make mine speak too. Selena smiled. Because now the voices were everywhere. And every footstep, every stitch, every whisper of wind, was carrying Amira's promise forward. Winter fell over Europe with soft snow and hard silence. Selena stood inside a centuries-old church in Prague. Not for a concert, not for a sermon, but for a gathering, unlike any the world had seen. She looked around the nave, transformed by children. The pews were covered in patchwork quilts stitched from hospital gowns. The altar was draped in paintings from children who had survived bombings, fires, sickness, and abandonment. And where a grand organ once played solemn hymns, now sat an orchestra of the most unexpected musicians. A boy with one arm and a cello. A girl in a wheelchair tapping percussion with her feet. A blind violinist who memorized his notes by sound. A burn survivor conducting with hands like twisted tree roots. And above them, floating in soft candlelight, was a banner that read, "The Symphony of Scars." This wasn't a concert. It was a testament. The idea had come from Sofia. One night in Berlin, after the success of Souls Without Borders, she had painted a canvas with a series of jagged red lines, slashes really intertwined with music notes. At first, Selena didn't understand. Then Sofia had written a single sentence under the painting. Our scars are not silent. Selena stared at those words for hours. She reached out to Lena. Find me children who play music, not in schools, but in pain, in shadows, in silence. And they did. Through letters, through whispers, through shelters and hospital beds. Children who couldn't afford instruments but built them from trash. Children who played lullabies to their siblings after war. Children who never learned to read music, but composed by memory, by dreams, by sorrow. They came from Gaza, from Aleppo, from New Orleans after the floods, from Ukraine, from Ethiopia. And now, they were here, ready to play. The night of the performance, Selena wore a long coat stitched with Sofia's swirls and Anjani's embroidered symbols. On the inside hem was a secret, Amira's name sewn in gold thread. She didn't sit in the front row. She sat with the mothers. The lights dimmed. And the music began. It was not polished. It was not perfect. It ached. But it moved like a tide of memory. Violins screeched with desperation, then softened into longing. Cellos groaned like walls collapsing. Bells rang like lullabies in hospital wards. And in between, silence so sharp it cut through every soul in the room. The conductor, A girl named Luma who had lost both her parents and most of her fingers, guided the chaos like a poet, her body trembling with every beat. No one breathed. No one blinked. And when the final note faded, not a single person clapped. They stood. They wept. Because they had just heard what survival sounded like. After the performance, a man in a dark suit approached Selena. "I represent the Royal Conservatory," he said. "What you've done, this should be immortalized." Selena shook her head. "I didn't do it," she said. "They did." The man nodded slowly. "Then let's make sure they're never forgotten." And so, plans began for the first international children's music archive, to collect not just notes and lyrics, but the stories behind them. The hands that played through pain, the mouths that sang after trauma, the ears that learned to listen in silence. It would be called the Amira Sound Library, where every recording was a scar turned into a song. Backstage, Anjani helped Luma off her stool, wrapping her in a scarf made from old flags. Sofia handed her a drawing, an orchestra of stars playing with golden strings. Selena watched them all, her heart swelling, breaking, healing all at once. And in the corner of the room, a child she didn't know sat quietly. A boy with hearing aids drawing on a napkin. Selena approached gently. "What are you making?" He looked up shyly. "A stage," he said. "For kids who don't talk." She knelt beside him. "Are you a designer?" He shook his head. "I'm an architect." Selena smiled. Another spark. Another voice. Another stone in the cathedral they were building. One dream, one scar, one story at a time. She stood up slowly and looked around the room. Anjani laughing with a girl missing half her face. Sofia finger painting sound waves on the walls. Luma hugging her broken violin like a baby. This was not a movement anymore. This was a revolution of memory. A rebellion of beauty. A symphony stitched from things that were never meant to survive. And yet, here they were. Louder than ever. The winter thaw brought new life. Selena stood at the center of a dusty construction site in Marrakesh, Morocco. The sun beat down on cracked tiles and red clay walls. Around her, volunteers and local artisans hammered wood, hoisted beams, and painted vibrant murals on rising walls. There were no statues. No fountains. No glamorous entrances. Because this wouldn't be a place for posing. It would be a place for remembering. The Museum of the Unseen. Not a traditional museum with velvet ropes and polished glass. This one would house stories never told. Pieces never sold. Dreams that once sat in silence at the edge of the world. Clothes made from ration sacks. Shoes carved from flood debris. Crayons melted into broken tiles. Music recorded on cracked phones. Journals filled with unspoken grief. And on the final wall? A golden plaque. This is for the ones who never made it, but whose whispers moved mountains. Selena had designed this space with Anjani and Sofia by her side. Luma had sent audio loops to echo through the halls. Fragile notes layered with field recordings of children breathing, laughing, even weeping. It wasn't beautiful in the conventional sense. It was raw, unfiltered, sacred. But with growth came new resistance. A powerful investor who once supported the Amira project reached out. He wanted to turn the museum into an immersive digital experience. Sell NFTs, brand merchandise. Reconstruct fancy versions of the kids' art. Selena refused. So he pulled funding. And others followed. Within a week, half the donors were gone. Anjani sat quietly during the meeting where the final funds were counted. They were short. Very short. Sofia looked pale with worry, her fingers twitching as she scribbled frantic patterns across her sketchpad. Silence thickened. Selena swallowed hard. "We'll scale back," she said. "Make it smaller." But Anjani looked up. "No," she said firmly. "We don't shrink our voices when the world turns down the volume. We scream louder." And then she pulled out something from her backpack. It was Amira's original sketchbook. "Let's show them why we're here." They launched the campaign the next day. But not a sleek fundraiser. A challenge. They called it, The One Forgotten Thing. Selena and Anjani went live together. In the video, Anjani looked straight into the camera. Everyone has something they forgot. Something they threw away. Something small that once meant everything. She held up a crumpled hospital bracelet. "This was mine." Then Sofia appeared, holding a clay charm shaped like a heart, once crushed, now repaired with gold. Selena followed, holding Amira's final note. "Send us yours," she said. "Not for money. For memory." Within hours, thousands of items arrived. A rusted earring from a girl in Venezuela. A broken sandal from a child in Haiti. A melted toy car from an earthquake zone. A sketch of a bird drawn by a boy who had passed away 3 years prior. Each came with a story, a soul. And soon a miracle happened. A small collective of anonymous donors, moved by the campaign, reached out through Lena. "We don't want credit," they wrote. "We just want this museum to live." They wired the full amount. And more. The opening of the Museum of the Unseen didn't begin with a red carpet. It began with silence. Visitors removed their shoes before entering. They walked barefoot over floors made from repurposed textiles sent from every continent. The walls whispered stories through embedded speakers. And on the ceiling, thousands of paper stars floated, each one containing the name of a child who had contributed to the project since it began. Selena stood quietly by the entrance, dressed in the same denim jacket from that first red carpet. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Because Amira was speaking. Through the artwork. Through the shoes. Through the cracked violin cases and torn sketchbooks. Through the eyes of every visitor who stepped inside and wept without knowing why. And at the far end of the museum, past a narrow corridor lined with candlelight, was a final room. Small. Still. Quiet. Inside it, one glass case. And in it, a faded hospital gown. A pair of handmade sandals. A spiral notebook, pages curled. And a single line, written in child's handwriting on a folded paper. "I'm still here." The room had no title. But everyone knew. It belonged to Amira. Not as a victim. But as the one who lit the match. And burned the silence down. The museum had been open for 6 months. And every single day, it welcomed souls. Not just tourists or celebrities. But survivors. Mothers who had lost children. Fathers who never had the words. Siblings carrying old shoes like offerings. Doctors who remembered names they hadn't spoken in years. Some came in silence. Some left flowers. Some just stood for hours, reading the notes, tracing the stitches, listening to the whispers hidden in the walls. And at the center of it all, Amira's case never dimmed. Volunteers said the light inside the glass never flickered. Not even when the city had a power outage. Somehow it glowed. Soft, gentle, like breath. Selena didn't question it. She knew. Because some lights don't burn from electricity. They burn from purpose. From promise. That morning, Selena sat alone inside the final room. It was early. Before opening hours. Before the noise. She sat in front of Amira's case, knees to her chest, the denim jacket folded beside her. She was older now. Her fame had changed. Her voice had deepened. But inside, she was still that girl on the red carpet, wearing a simple outfit while the world laughed. She closed her eyes. And whispered, "Thank you. For seeing me before I saw myself." Silence. Then footsteps. Tiny, uneven. She turned. Anjani, now 12, walked in slowly, holding Sofia's hand. The girl still didn't speak, but she painted. More than ever. And her work now hung in galleries across 5 countries. Behind them came Elikem, carrying a small pair of shoes he had carved for a child who had just arrived at the refugee border in Greece. And then came Luma, arms wrapped in a scarf of musical notes stitched by volunteers from Brazil. No one said a word. They all just sat. Together. Around Amira. As if she were still here. And in some ways, she was. In every note Luma played. In every design Anjani drew. In every sunrise Sofia painted with her hands. In every kite Elikem built and released to the sky. The room glowed. Not from the lights. But from the stories. From the children who were never meant to lead. But did. Selena reached into her bag. Pulled out a small envelope. It was wrinkled. Sealed. Written in Amira's handwriting. She kept it all these years. A letter marked. For when it's time to let go. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single line. Written in soft, imperfect script. "You never had to carry me forever. You just had to carry me far enough for others to find me." Tears rolled down Selena's cheeks. She passed the letter to Anjani. To Sofia. To Elikem. To Luma. Each of them read it. And they understood. Outside, the museum gates opened. Visitors were already waiting. Among them, new faces. A boy from the Philippines with polio who painted with his mouth. A girl from a remote village in Iceland who sculpted from driftwood. A child from South Sudan who sang lullabies no one had ever heard before. The next generation. The next wave. The next chapter. Selena stood. Walked to the entrance. And instead of leading, she stepped aside. Let the children walk ahead of her. As they did, she whispered to herself one last time. "Amira, we're still walking. And we always will." And far above, beyond the clouds, beyond the pain, beyond the years. A little girl smiled, because her light will never go out. The end. This story teaches us that true beauty is born from compassion, not perfection. That children, regardless of pain, background, or disability, hold incredible power to inspire, lead, and heal. Through the characters of Amira, Anjani, Sofia, Elikem, and others, we are reminded that a single promise can create a ripple that touches the world. Kindness in silence often speaks louder than 1,000 words. Art, fashion, and music can become bridges for healing, justice, and remembrance. And most of all, that every unseen, unheard soul deserves to be seen, heard, and remembered. Scroll disclaimer. This story is a work of fiction, crafted with emotion and depth to feel real, in order to draw powerful lessons about empathy, resilience, and the transformative power of love. None of the characters or events are based on actual individuals, but they reflect truths experienced by many around the world. Thank you for listening to this story to the end. If the message touched your heart, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing to this channel. Let us know in the comments. Which part of the story moved you the most? What lesson will you carry with you? Your support helps us bring more meaningful stories like this to life. See you in the next one.